Hello everybody, this is Jay and welcome to another Linux command tutorial video. And in this video I'm going to show you how to create users on your Linux system. And this is something that we need to get out of the way because videos that are coming up pretty soon, I'm going to be showing you things like adding user permissions, modifying group permissions and things like that. But I can't really do that if we only have one account on our Linux system. Well, actually I could, but I don't recommend playing around with your main account. So it's a good idea to create some secondary accounts that you can add, delete, and mess with to your heart's content without any risk of deleting something important. So I'm going to show you how to use the user add command, and I recommend that you create several users on your system, and it doesn't matter what you name the users, just as long as you have a few to work with. So in order to create a user account, what I'll do is I'll use the user add command, and there are some more options that we have to give the user add commands because we have to know what the username is that we want to create, as well as some other fields we have to use. So first we'll type the name of the user account. So I'll name the user Penguin. I'll press space, and then we should type -m. And what -m does is it tells the command to create that user's home directory right away. And that's definitely something I recommend you do. And after you after you type -m, press space, and then type -s space, then /bin/bash bash, and this is basically the default shell that the user account will log into. And bash is the main shell for virtually all Linux distributions, or at least all of them that I've ever tried. There are other shells, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So just use this one and don't question it for now. It's something that you really shouldn't change anyway, unless you had a specific reason. For example, if you worked at a company that you insisted on using a different shell, for example. So just leave that as bin bash for right now, and then press space, and then you type -g space users. And what this is, the smaller case -g is the default group that user is a member of, and it should always be users unless you have a specific reason why it shouldn't be. But for the most part, you'll almost always use users as the main group for all user accounts. And then the last part here is optional. And I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to just talk about it because this is going to be something that'll come up later anyway. If you type -g with a capital G and then another space, you can type some groups in there that you also want the user to be a member of. So I'll give you an example. One group that I use quite often is the VBox users group. That's if you use a VirtualBox program to run virtual machines on your Linux system, and your user account should be a member of that if you're going to. But that's just the first group that came up off the top of my head. But that's just to show you that the smaller case G users right here means that you want that user's main group to be users, and that should always be the case. Now the latter part, the -G, is optional. It's not required. You don't have to do that. But if you have other user groups that you want that user to be a member of, then you can type the -G and the names of those groups. Now I'm going to erase that because we're not getting into groups yet, but I'm just telling you that right now so you're prepared for it for when we do. And then oh, and I'm so sorry, you have to use this command as root. My user account is not going to be able to do this. For example, if I press enter, it's going to tell me that permission is denied. That's because the root account is required to create a user on a Linux system. And on Ubuntu and many others, there is no root command, so you just basically put sudo at the very beginning. We went through the sudo command in its very basic detail before, and that tells us we want to run this command with root permissions. And you always need to have sudo in front unless you are running as root. So sorry I didn't mention that earlier. So press enter, and it's going to ask you for the password. So just set a password, or excuse me, it's going to ask you for your password. So type in your password, and it should just return to the command prompt just like that, and the user's added. If I type ls/home, you see there I have a folder called Penguin. That's because the -m command or option here basically told the command that I want this user to have a home directory in the typical place. By default is in /home. So that's what that does. It just says whatever the user account logon name is, create /home/ the user account name, and that's definitely something that you need to do because everyone needs a home directory. So now you might have noticed that something is missing. When I entered my password, to authenticate my ability to add a user in the first place because it requires root permissions. But I didn't actually give this user his or her own password. So what password would they use to log in? Well, we need to set one. So what we need to do to set a password is a passwd command. And what that the password command does, if you give it no options whatsoever, is it'll allow you to change your password. So if I was to press enter, it would ask me for my current password and give me an option to change my password to something else. However, if I wanted to set a password for another user, I just put sudo in front of it, and then at the end of it I put in the user account. So I'll type in penguin. So sudo space passwd space penguin, and if I press enter, it's going to ask me what password I want for the user penguin. So whatever your company's requirements are for the default password syntax, you would use that, or if you don't work at a company, just use whatever you want. So that's what I'll do. And the password was updated successfully. So basically the takeaway from the passwd command is, again, if you use it with no options, it'll allow you to change your password. But if the root uses it and uses a user account as an argument at the end of the command, then it'll allow you to set a password for any other user. And root is so powerful that root can set the password to any other user account at any time. And the root account is definitely powerful, so that's a good example of that. So that is your quick tutorial, maybe not so quick tutorial, on how to create users. So just to run through it one more time. To add a user, we use the user_add command, and the next thing we had to type for the user_add command was the name of the user account that we wanted to create. The -m, what that did was it told the command that we want it to automatically create the home directory for that user for us, which you should always do. The -s and the /bin/bash tells the command that we want that user's default shell to be bin bash, which is almost always going to be the case. And then finally we did -g space users because we wanted users to be the primary account for that user account, and that's something that you're almost always going to want to be the case. Now notice again I forgot the sudo in front of it, and I added that because putting sudo in front of the command to add a user is required unless you are actually already running as root. And then after I created the user account, I used the passwd command with sudo and the name of the user account I want to change a password to, and that allowed me to set a password for that user. So right now I'm ready to give that person his or her login name and his or her password, and that person can now access this system. Now the user probably can't access all that much because he or she isn't a member of very many groups yet. In fact, only just one. But we'll get into groups later. And for now, though, I would recommend that you create several user accounts on your Linux system and get some accounts created. I would say create 10 of them if you want. That way you can also practice deleting user accounts, which is going to be what I'm going to show you in the next video. So I'll see you then. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.